Hello and a warm Collisions YYC. Welcome to my guest this morning, Miss Lisa Baril. How are you, Lisa?
I am wonderful.
So good to meet you this morning. I believe the internet conspired. We put out a request a while back going, who should be on the show? And I think a couple people put your name forward. So very nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
As anyone who knows me knows why I do this podcast, because I get to meet cool people and then have really cool conversations about something they're passionate about.
Oh, I hope I live up to all of that coolness.
You will. You absolutely will. You already have. That's the fun thing about it. So I always do pre-chats before I get on these calls. And most people just show up. Lisa showed up with notes. Lisa showed up with thoughts. Lisa showed up with ideas on how we are going to do it, which I love. So we're going to get into it. But before we do, let's let people, who is Lisa? So you are the owner principal at LCH Relations.
Yes.
That could be a very innocuous 3-letter acronym agency.
Yes.
What is LCH Relations? Who are you? What do you do in the world? And let's go from there.
Yeah, well, for the past 20 years or so, which tells you my age.
You started when you were 12, don't lie.
I have been helping organizations with change, with leadership and team and organizational culture, improving communications, and really doing this primarily through dialogue and training. Of course, meetings are a significant part of that. I see myself as a strategic advisor and thought partner, and truly helping the organization to build its internal capability and capacity. I'm not one of those consultants who sort of keeps everything and says, no, you always have to come to me. My aim is really that you're going to receive benefit and value long after our initial engagement. And, I happen to be an award-winning facilitator, so meetings are my thing. Sessions are my thing. Getting groups together to have conversations. That's my thing.
Meetings are my thing. Do you have a t-shirt? Do you wear that when you facilitate?
I don't.
It's maybe a bumper sticker, maybe a coffee mug. Let's start with a coffee mug. We'll go there. I'm a marketer,
good.
so I'm like, oh, what? Meetings are my thing.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I love so much about what you said. And how do we get better as a group of humans working together? And then ultimately that is no matter what business you're in, and whether it's this or that or tech or not, that ability to facilitate, the ability to engage with each other. Why do meetings get such a bad rap? Let's go right after it.
Well, first of all, most of the studies that say meetings are a waste of time start on the premise that meetings are a waste of time. So
feed that cognitive bias all you can.
Exactly.
Right?
So right off the bat, that's where it goes. And secondly, I'd say we just don't put enough thought into them, that we're not prepared enough. We don't think about what really needs to happen at this meeting. We don't help people be prepared enough for the meeting. I think we've gotten worse with virtual meetings. We seem to forget that we're human. So virtual meetings back to back, I don't know how many clients tell me like there's no space at all. It's just essentially sit at the computer, stare at the screen, meeting after meeting after meeting. And in old times, which I'm familiar with, you used to have
5 years ago. By old times, you mean 2019.
Yeah. You had to move, maybe from room to room, maybe from building to building. You grabbed a cup of coffee, you stopped by a colleague's desk, you had time to absorb, hey, what happened in this last meeting? How might that impact something that's coming up in the next meeting, get my thoughts together. And for some reason, we don't think we need to do that with virtual meetings. So to some degree, I think they've gotten maybe worse, which I think has then sort of supported that, meetings are a waste of time. And frankly, they're not. And they are our way of co-creation, of action, of dialogue, of relationship building. They tell you a lot about the culture. So meetings are a waste of time. I think we shouldn't go there. They are. Some of them are for sure.
Well, we're going to
get into them right.
We're going to get into what I'm hearing you though talk about is right out of the bat. Well, it's not even. Well, we will get to how do you run a meeting effectively? How do you know it was effective? What I'm hearing you say though is just good hygiene. Just managing what's the objective? Why are we showing up even at the start? But then giving yourself 10 minutes. Sometimes you just need a pee break even in between meetings. Like I have people like, oh my God, I got to take a minute here because I haven't gone to the bathroom for the last 3 meetings. I'm like, please stop. Or can you mind if I grab an apple? I'm like, no, please go grab some food. And what do you think? Any thoughts on the phenomenon of why we do the back-to-backs with virtual and why it's so, you can roll into a meeting even a couple minutes late and people wouldn't notice, but on virtual, everyone's like, sorry, I'm 30 seconds late. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
it's okay. It's 30 seconds, but that clock is in the corner of the screen all the time.
I think it's easy to book them back to back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's harder when you had to book rooms and spaces. Sometimes
Yeah.
they're not available. Sometimes you had to wait an hour. Sometimes, right? So it's just easier. And to your point about the hygiene, I mean, take a sip of water during a meeting and people are like, oh, what's she doing? Right? It's a sip of, it's like, well, if I was sitting in a room, I'd be having a cup of coffee and maybe even a croissant
I
that
might
would
get up
be
and walk to the table and grab some food
crumbling
and
all
come
over
back.
my shirt, and nobody would be panicking. It would all be good. We'd carry on with the meeting. We're, humans.
Yes, it's humans. Interesting that, because I've found, for me, and this is again my own personal, I found that before COVID, I was a little more serious about meetings. When you go on a virtual meeting, we did some virtual, but I hated it before, and now it's my life. Now many a screaming 3-year-old has run through a meeting that I was on, not in my house, but in someone else's house. I'm like, oh, it's okay. You're human. You're working from home. So I did find for me a little bit, COVID mellowed me out a bit. Where people, like, they have a dog, they have a cat. It's fine. They're doing their work. They're showing up as them. I found that I got a little bit more desensitized to that and a little more forgiving around humanity, to your comment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it can go either way.
Yeah,
so,
fair enough.
on camera, off camera, the clock's ticking. Like you said, if you kind of walked into a meeting in a room a minute late because you were traveling between rooms, there wasn't a big deal, but 30 seconds seems like forever on a virtual platform.
Yes.
So waiting for someone's like, well, are they coming? Are they coming? It's like, yeah, maybe they are just grabbing a cup of coffee and coming back to the
Maybe
table.
they're just being human, right?
Yeah.
So from your perspective, when you work with organizations, I'm assuming that, are you brought in specifically to help them with meetings, or you're brought in for other things, but then yet meetings are part of how you get your job done?
It could be either. It could be either. Sometimes it's specific, right? Come in and help us with our offsite retreat. We're doing strategic planning and operational planning, or we're developing our core values, or our teams are struggling to work together and we're going to pull them all together into a room, whether that's a virtual room or an in-person room, and, help us structure this and help us get to where we need to go. It could be that. It could also be, come in and we want to put together a communications program for our leadership team. All right, let's talk a little bit about how your behavior in meetings impacts.
What are you doing now, right? Yeah,
right?
Where do we want to get to? So let's maybe just park the virtual or in person, or maybe we can't, but it's so easy to point. Let's talk about just that fundamental, like the things you talked about, and I've been in those things. Okay, we're going to get serious about this meeting, so therefore we will have a facilitator. But yet I'll book a meeting with 7 or 8 people and maybe not put an agenda. I'm not saying me. I would never do that. Not put an agenda, not let them know what the desired outcome was. Is it also just at the first step that we should take every meeting that seriously if we're engaging another person's time? Like if I'm going to bring my whole team together, I call Lisa because I need to do an offsite. I'm going to get serious about it. But yet I lob meetings around in my calendar all week long. Is it just about get more serious?
Yeah. In your day-to-day meetings, which we're all having meetings every day, be clear. What's the purpose? Why? What are we trying to achieve here? And why are you here in the meeting? Why am I inviting you in particular? Well, I'm inviting you because you're an SME or you're going to have some work after this meeting. So you need to be here so that it's clear to people. So many times people are like, I don't even know why I'm in this meeting. Right. So, and it doesn't have to be, I prep 1.5 to 2.5 times the length of the meeting for these bigger meetings. Even for an 1.5 hour meeting, that's the kind of preparation I'll put in. But even 10 or 15 minutes to think about, okay, why am I bringing these people together? What do we want to achieve in this hour? Who needs to be there? Do I need to do anything to help people be prepared? Even spending that 10 or 15 minutes thinking about that is going to help you have a better meeting. I worked with a client. We did communication, improving the leadership communications work. I did facilitated an offsite for them for all their leadership at all levels to work on leadership development. And we also looked at meeting culture. I did training, worked closely with them, and they literally call me and say, Lisa, we've Lisa-fied our meetings. And, they do things like, if you invite me to a meeting and you have no purpose identified, no basic agenda, I'm allowed to say no. I'm allowed to, or to say, why do I need to be there? It's not just the cost of a meeting. You have to think about not just the time of the people in the room and multiply that. You get a bunch of VPs in a room.
It's an expensive meeting.
How much does that cost that meeting? But if you're in sales or supply chain or many other kinds of function, it's lost opportunity cost. You're not out working with the customers. Yeah. You're not out doing business development. You're sitting in this room. So it's really important that we value the people who are coming to the meeting.
That value, that respect. Is this about less meetings and better meetings, or is it simply about better meetings and better being more effective that have outcomes, people feel
I feel it's about better meetings. If we need 3 meetings to accomplish something, because that's the way to do it the most effectively, to respect people's time, the design works out that way, then let's do 3 meetings. If we only need 1, then that's great. But it should all go back to, well, what's the purpose? What are the desired outcomes? What are we trying to achieve? And I like to and the people struggle with this all the time. It's quite interesting. A lot of times I spend the majority of time talking to a client, well, what is really the purpose? What do you really want out of this meeting? And, you'll get all kinds, well, I want people working together better. Okay, well, what do you want?
To accomplish what?
What do you want out of that? So I like to think of it in terms of products.
Okay.
When the meeting's done, what kind of products do you want from that? Well, I want a list of pros and cons from the team. I want an action plan. I want a strategy. I want an operational project plan. I want exploration of one of the issues that we're facing. I want us to have a list of gaps and opportunities. I want us to have a list of obstacles and how we're going to overcome them. I want our core values. I want drafted core values. Right? So sometimes when you think about in terms of what's the tangible things people are leaving with, that helps them think about what are the outcomes of the meeting.
Well, and every single thing you said gave me a chance to think about it. I'm like, okay, if we're working on our values, I can think about that in advance. I can come prepared, even if it's just occupying some of the cycles while I'm walking to get a coffee. Right.
And of course, those are the tangible outcomes. There's also the intangible. So what is it you want experientially for people? You want increased connection. You want people who haven't worked together before to get to know one another. You want to calm the waters. You want people to feel understood.
Damage control, maybe. Yeah, a little
valued, right? There's experiential outcomes along with that as well.
You talked about how so many leaders, or just individuals, don't have to be leaders, humans are challenged with that. Is it because we're not clear ourselves, so we call the meeting because we know something needs to be done or an action needs to be taken, so we action a meeting without actually being clear? Is it sometimes that people have a hard time living in the future? It's more abstract, like, I don't know, I'll know when I get there, I'll know when I'm in the room. What do you think is, and that can be a variable, because I've seen this, I think every organization I've worked with has been plagued with this. There's too many meetings, so we don't think about them. We get overwhelmed by them. We get too many booked in our calendar. We have some organizations that no one even looks, like they're partners of ours. No one even looks at their calendars. They just lob in meetings. So they're always like, oh, sorry, I'm already booked for 3 other meetings at the same time slot. That's not giving anybody much of a chance to think about anything.
So I think it's a couple things. I think it's us not putting the time in, even if that's 10 minutes, to go, no, what do I really need? What do we really need from this meeting? What do I want the people to experience? Just not putting that time in. I think it's thinking we go to meetings as a default. Okay. I need an update. So let's have a meeting. An update, you know what? Email, reports, put something in your processes that does it. Meetings should be about action. I cannot figure out what it is I want people to do, or I want to build relationships.
It's probably
right?
it's probably tangible or intangible, but if I don't have that, it's not a meeting. It could be an email. That meeting could have been an email, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw one the other day, a meme, that meeting could have been a fist fight. I thought that was quite amusing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So
why don't we just go out back the barn and have a fist fight and everyone will get sorted out?
Yeah, and I think sometimes, like I said, it's a default. Okay, we've always had a meeting, so we should have a meeting so people don't question and go, well, just a sec. Is this the best way? Ask your team. Hey, usually we do these in this. Was there a better? No, yeah, you know what? We should do this instead. Let's do the updates by roundtable and then, or by email, and then let's do a meeting to focus on a particular thing that we want to work on.
I was talking with a gentleman the other day who focuses, he runs a company called Craddock.ai, Israel Peck, and he was sharing with me all the work. He was a advisor, management consultant, and really started to see, hey, we're focusing on financials, we're focusing on supply chain. Who the hell's focusing on culture? And he said, one of the first fundamentals, if you don't have a regular meeting cadence for connectivity, what are we working on to really like inside a group? He said, not even company wide, but with the group that you're working on. He goes, it was one of the things, I won't even start talking to you about how to improve your culture if you're not doing the bare minimum, which is creating connectivity in your team. But he was very specific. It's like you're meeting weekly so everyone has optics on what everyone else is doing, which then creates empathy and understanding why you're busy and I'm also busy and so on and so forth. Does that resonate for you as well as a baseline?
Meetings are I mean, it's their grassroots. That's what your culture is, right? Meetings tell you, go to a meeting, and that will tell you a lot about what the culture is. And if you look at anything around leadership presence and employee engagement, one of the most important things is that one-to-one, once a week with each employee conversation. And that's a meeting. It's a one-to-one meeting, but it's a meeting. And that sets the tone. And it sets the tone for congruency. How are your actions in that one-to-one or in a bigger meeting aligned with your words? Right? So, yes, absolutely. It's a sign of the culture. And it is those connection points. And, I've worked on a lot of projects where we have stand-up meetings once a week. And people will say, well, Lisa, I don't have time to, put together some kind of structure and think about my outcome, right? Like sometimes this is like literally, if you get into the habit of it, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, if it's an hour meeting, a 30-minute meeting, right? To spend that time. But something like purpose, process, payoff. So stand-up meeting. Purpose. Right? You're with your little group. We're on a project. What's the purpose? Well, the purpose is so that to identify what everyone's working on this week. What's the process? We're going to do a quick round table. Everybody's got 2 minutes to talk about what they're working on. What's the payoff? Well, the payoff is that we'll all know what each other is doing this week and we can go off and do our thing, right? So you can give some structure and think about the purpose and who should be there and all those things. It doesn't have to be 2 days of thinking for every hour meeting. That's not what I'm saying. And it doesn't even have to be that level of formality, but it's just a matter of showing that you value people's time, that you've thought about this, and that you realize this is an opportunity for a connection point meeting versus a default meeting while we've always done it. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm just looking at the list he gives, connectivity weekly. Number 2 was one-to-ones. He goes, coaching opportunities with your direct reports to connect with them. Number 3 was the discipline around calendar. If you're going to have a meeting, be disciplined about it. Don't cancel it. Don't move it around arbitrarily. Tell people what they're going to show up for, because that immediately sets the tone for a culture that can grow and actually be, we were joking the difference between a bunch of people and a high performing, which gets thrown around a lot. High performing team. Is this just a bunch of people that were forced to do something under a tight deadline and they want to kill each other? Maybe not a high performing team. And I can see how meeting culture plays a huge part in that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And leadership shows up in meetings, how they show up. And that tells you a lot about culture. It's like, is the leader allowing respectful dissent? Is the leader listening? Is the leader encouraging connections? Is the leader stepping back a little bit and listening to the wisdom of the group? Is it shared decision making? Is it not, right? Like there's so many things that happen from a team perspective, a leadership perspective, which therefore means a culture and an organizational perspective at meetings.
Talk to me about the balance of like setting the tone and setting the framework versus leading a meeting versus knowing when leadership is to step back. Because I find a lot of leaders like, it's my meeting, I'm going to talk the most. I need
Yeah.
to keep it going. I need to do everything. But what I heard you say right there, which I loved, knowing when to go, I'm just going to step back and let the team, because then you're getting that connectivity maybe that was a sub motivation for the meeting. Lots of leaders like to lead and sometimes mistake what that looks like.
Well, again, it depends on the purpose.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with the team, with the leader saying, hey, I need to inform you about a big decision that's come from up top, and the team wants to know, and they want to hear it from their direct leader. That's where people go. They go to their direct leader. That's where I go. That's who I trust. That's who I go for information. There's nothing wrong with that being the purpose. But what if part of that was, oh, and by the way, after I share, I'm going to I'm going to step back. We're going to
Open
do
dialogue.
some pairs or some small groups, and let's talk about what are the implications for our team, because I want to hear from you about what are the implications for our team. Right? So it's that combination. You're still a leader and they're looking to you for leadership, but you're also a leader who has those soft skills: facilitation, communication, coaching, listening, right? Those things that we say are soft skills all the time.
Soft skills is a bit of a misnomer, but yes, I hear you.
Right? So you're still looking, and depending on how the decisions are being made, and that may vary from meeting to meeting, from project to project, leader to leader. So sometimes you bring a group together and they're making the decision in the room. So that, as long as that the decision making needs to be clear. Am I here to help make a decision, or am I here to help provide information so that a leader outside of the meeting
Can make a decision.
People can work with either one. We're all adults. We can work with either one. We recognize, hey, this actually isn't our decision to make, but great, our leader actually wants our input so that they can make a better decision. People can work with it, but you got to be transparent about how the decision's being made.
I appreciate that. Spontaneous versus reflective. As we were chatting on our pre-call, introvert, extrovert, and all the other words. I love how you said, well, I like to think of it as spontaneous thinkers and reflective thinkers. I can be a very spontaneous thinker. So therefore, I sometimes talk a lot of meetings. How, as a facilitator or a leader of a group of individuals, or facilitating or the meeting, how do you balance? How do you create a balance of those two things where we all know who talks more in a meeting?
So,
me.
So let me talk a little bit about spontaneous and reflective. So, many times I go into meeting, do a session. The client may have offered an opportunity for me to talk to people in advance. They may not have. I don't know the people. I certainly have not done I don't have their DISC analysis or their Myers-Briggs or any of those things. So essentially I walk in knowing that there's going to be a portion of people who are spontaneous thinkers versus reflective thinkers. The spontaneous thinkers, just like you're saying, they like to call out ideas. They'll do the report outs. They'll do the verbal brainstorming. Yeah, get the energy going. Great. So there's nothing wrong with spontaneous thinkers. Reflective thinkers, on the other hand, are going to be more quiet. I need time. I need some individual thinking and reflection time. I don't want to do yell out loud. I'm more analytical. I'm going to offer, as an analytical, I'm going to offer lots of data, right? So those are the two ways. So really the way that you are managing, because you need both of those energies in the room, and that you need to respect both those energies. And depending on what you're trying to do, if you think about it, if it was all quiet and no one ever talked, that wouldn't be the best meeting. Or if everyone's talking over each other, that's not the best meeting either. So that's through design and structure that you help make sure everyone is heard, everyone's contribution is valued. So it's as simple as things like, we're going to spend some individual reflection time. We're going to do a worksheet, right? So now the reflective thinkers are going, whoo, I'm calmer now. I know I'm going to have some time to think. Spontaneous thinkers go, okay, I'll do some thinking. Fine, right? You do pair work. Pair work is less intimidating than just speaking to the whole room. You do small group work. Again, right? You do roundtables. One of the things to do is if you have a leader at the table, the leader goes last in a roundtable. So the leader actually hears from everybody first. So that's all part of how you design to accommodate and make sure that at the end of the day, everyone feels valued, everyone feels like they were able to contribute. So the way I designed the meeting with small groups, and I did a carousel walk. That's a whole thing where you do stuff on the walls and you walk around in small groups and do stuff. There was never an opportunity for any one person to actually hijack the meeting, which I know lots of people are concerned about. So at the end of that, I had people come back to me and say, oh, like that person didn't hijack the meeting. It's like, well, because there really wasn't an opportunity to, but yet that person still felt heard, still felt valued, still had the opportunity to contribute, but so did everyone else. So that's, that it is about how you design. It's something as simple, you think about the boardroom, change your seat, change your perspective.
Yeah.
Don't sit in the same seat. You sit in the same seat. The people beside you sit in the same seat. You have the same conversations with the same people at every single meeting. As simple as, hey, we're going to change it up. Change your seat, change your perspective. Sit somewhere else.
Which is hugely valuable. I love the concept of perceptual positions. Just the way you look at the room, it shows up differently if you physically move your seat. How much training do we get on how to run effective meetings while we're taking our MBA programs or our business degrees? I've not seen a lot of it.
Well,
it's a loaded question.
Have a business degree or an MBA, so I can't really speak, but I'm going to guess that you have zero training and that that's something that facilitation as a skill is important as a leader, as a team member, as anyone who has to run meetings, for sure. And because we've just talked about how important meetings are to signaling culture, demonstrating the style of leadership, allowing for team connection. To me, it's a kind of a critical skill to have.
Are you seeing more organizations, quote unquote, get it? Or is there more demand? I assume you're quite busy with this because I talk to so many organizations and it's almost a universal challenge. How can we be more effective? Yeah,
it depends. Some organizations don't think they really need help and they've got their structure and they've got their agendas and it's all fair. Good. And right. I think as organizations actually invest in, let's say, facilitation training for some of their staff, they go, oh, this is a little more challenging than what I thought. Maybe we do need to bring in someone. And the beauty of bringing in me is I have a neutral perspective. I have no vested interest in, I'm not doing the work. I have no vested interest in the outcome. I'm not offering content. I'm there to make sure the process is running, to hold the room. Well, that's what I'm there to do. I'm not there to contribute to the content or do the work after. So I can be a truly neutral perspective coming in. But, I always joke that everything I've chosen to do, A, no one understands what it is. And B, they just think it's easy because they don't understand all the stuff that goes in. So, right, effective communications, helping people communicate really well, know when and where, right message, right channel, right person. You're doing a lot of that work. And so it looks seamless. I've worked in communication for years. And I remember a senior VP saying, I don't even think we needed communication support. Look at how good we're doing. It's like, well, you kind of had some people in the background helping you with that. And it's the same with facilitation, right? So sometimes I'm the most successful when someone says, Lisa, I'm not even sure if we needed you today. It went so smoothly and the teams worked together so well and everyone contributed. There was so much energy. Sometimes that's a sign of success because they owned it. They did the work. I did a lot of legwork in the background for that seamless thing to happen. I'm sure that you experience that as a podcast host as well.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of prep and stuff that goes on in the background to produce this seamless product.
Oh my God. It just seemed like you guys were on the same page the whole time. It was so natural. I'm like, yes, exactly. Which is the preparation makes the output. Talk to me. I want to get into the weeds a little bit. So I'm a leader and I have the group session. I set the agenda, I do all the things, but then I rely on my one-to-ones to then maybe talk a little bit more with the reflective people in my group. But then there's a risk sometimes of triangulation, and sometimes there's like little sub meetings. And how do you manage the balance between like culture of like, okay, we're going to have an effective meeting. We're all going to get together. But then myself as a leader are going to have one-on-one conversations with you, and I'm going to maybe politic a bit and try to move things forward. How does that succeed? And maybe where does it start to fail when it creates triangulation, or it creates people having the meeting after the meeting, the water cooler meeting when the really meeting happens? Or does that just part and parcel to how humans operate?
It's probably part and parcel, but I think there's a need to be authentic. Listen, does your team have input into this decision or not? If they don't, be authentic about that. Listen, not going to host a meeting to say, it's like doing a survey and saying, well, we don't really have to do anything with the results, do we? Yep. You're better off to not have done the survey. So if you truly are not interested in your team's view in something, and you actually are just talking to individual employees, then go ahead and do that. It's really about authenticity. I truly want to see my team work together. I truly want them to co-create, collaborate, and come up with some solutions. And I'm prepared when we leave this to remove the obstacles so that they can do that. So if I'm going in saying, well, I actually want them to land here, and then I'm going to take this away and do this, then you're doing damage by holding the meeting. It's about authenticity, congruency with your words and your actions. And these are, basic leadership premises, I think, of a good leader.
They either create trust or they erode trust, really, is what we're talking to the foundation about.
And you do bring something, the meeting after the meeting. Well, sometimes the meeting after the meeting happens because there just wasn't clarity and nobody put in time to wrap properly, right? Okay. We run. Virtual meetings are notorious.
Gotta go run.
So I run away and I go, oh, did I have something I needed to do? What was that? What was the next step? Was there a deadline coming up I need? Right? So then now I'm calling Tyler to say, Tyler, I know we just had the meeting, but I didn't understand. We kind of ended off on this note, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to do something. Right? So close effectively. Closing strong is super important. Leave 5 minutes, leave 10 minutes to say who needs to do what. What's the next steps? Some acknowledgement of the work done. Summarizing the work done. Thanking the group. Maybe asking, how could we do this better next time, right? So leave some time at the end to have a strong close. And then people walk away going, oh, okay, Tyler's got this. I got to take away this. And I'm ready now for the next meeting.
What are your views on all of the AI-based tools now that are being invited to meetings that send summary notes after the fact, which sometimes I've found has eliminated the thought or the need for a strong close? We're like, oh, we've got this note taker. Everyone will get their tasks afterwards. Good, bad, and different. Like anything, good if used properly, maybe bad if used as a crutch.
I think I've been experimenting with it. It is great to capture, the verbatim notes. It is good for, you get a lot of volume of information sometimes from meetings, right? If everyone's contributing, you got 50 people in the room. So it can help with, theming that information, but you still need the human look at it to go, no, that doesn't really make sense. That's not really what happened there. And in terms of the summary notes, sure, you can say, you'll get the summary notes after this, but the summary notes are not going to tell you clearly who's doing what, who's, when is that due? And does anyone need any support to do A, B, or C? What do we need to do in our next meeting? I don't think AI is going to do it. It probably will. Actually, you probably don't even need me here. You just need the robot.
I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're there. I do find it funny sometimes when you were in a meeting and you're like, no, this is what we've talked about. Then you read the notes. You're like, feels like that AI tool was listening to a different meeting. Maybe I need to relook at that. And if I'm in 6 meetings a day and I get 6 of those notes, I'm not reading those. It just doesn't happen. It's also, there's a volume problem, right?
Yeah, you've got to summarize and close strong. Make sure people are, good to go at the end of it. Know what's happening. Know what their accountabilities are. Know if they need to be reaching out to someone else. Know if they need to come to the next meeting. Know what they need to bring to the next meeting.
I really like closing strong. So I heard just on a simple format, purpose, process, payoff. If I'm doing a day-long facilitation, I'm probably going to take it more seriously. But if I'm doing a 15-minute stand-up, to your argument, whoa, how much do I have to prep? We're just going to do a stand-up. So at this, am I safe to say that even at the most basic level, the purpose, process, payoff, as far as that little trifecta, is that minimum? Is that minimum to show up, to even hope to check some of the other boxes of being respectful, being inclusive?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's, even if you started with that premise.
Because I've been to a lot of meetings that we didn't even have purpose showed up.
Yeah.
And we tried for a while in our organization. Like if you don't put an objective, nobody has to show up. But it was tough. Our meetings, I wouldn't say are ineffective, and they could use a lot more structure.
Yeah. And like I said, it doesn't have to be this overly formal. I mean, again, this is related to what are you trying to achieve and what's the culture of your organization. So I have worked with corporations where it's more formal. Yeah. This is our style of agenda. This is our template. We have a safety moment. We have this kind of acknowledgement. We have this. And if there's formal elements, that's part of the culture. You do it.
And depending on, we're a marketing agency. So lots of collaboration, lots of sometimes abstract thinking of like, hey, we need to come up with an idea. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. And there's collaboration all the time. And we are a remote team. So there's almost no such thing as over communicating when you've got team members across the country all working on similar projects. Yeah. That our world often has very consistent and frequent and often tight deadlines. So it definitely breeds. If you don't talk to so-and-so, you're probably not going to hit the deadline, which happens to be tomorrow at noon. And those things are happening all the time. So the quick cadence, I like the purpose, process, payoff, because there's a lot of quick, short meetings that sometimes just like, let's just get us all on a call. And is that a little extra next step of thought put into it, which can, again, be respectful, because everyone who's on that call now is busy doing something else. They all have multiple deadlines. Mm-hmm.
And if you have multiple deadlines, you need clarity. Who's going to do what? Do I need to connect with Tyler for this particular deadline? Am I doing this on my own? What's due when, right? And so I would say if the meetings don't have even just the basics, then you're probably having maybe more meetings than what you need to have just to figure out.
Because if I just would have been clear yesterday, I wouldn't have had to call you today.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. What are some of when you work with an organization, they said, we need to do better. Do you see that the culture, do you see that we're missing deadline? I'm assuming there's a variety, but is there kind of a laundry list of things that you can look in as a longtime facilitator and go, okay, I see some of the gauges on the dashboard are in the red, and here's some of the things that would let you know, if I'm listening to this as a leader, we've got this. What are some of the things that you may or may not be seeing that are indicators that this quote unquote could be better?
I think I would wrap it up by just saying that they often call me in when they've gotten stuck.
Okay.
We're not making progress. Or, you know what? We have tried to work on these values for 6 months and we just can't seem, everyone's not comfortable and we can't seem to get the right input and we're not doing whatever it takes to kind of get that. Oh, we had a strategy. We haven't looked at it for 2 years. We want this to be different. This time we want a strategy that we actually execute and embed into operations and that people understand what they're doing and what they're being measured on. And so it is quite often, sometimes sometimes it's the annual stuff, right? We're doing our annual planning. We're doing our annual piece. But more often than not, it's like, we need the team working together better. We've got all these levels of leaders and we want their input on development. We are getting stuck. We haven't been able to move this particular thing forward and we really want some help and we don't even understand why we can't move it forward, but it's not moving forward. And so we need someone neutral to come in who can observe this kind of thing and help us move it forward. And I will often get feedback that like, Lisa, we couldn't get that done in 6 months. And in 1 day or a day and a half, we've made so much progress that we're like just ready to roll.
So oftentimes it's the big events, it's the pain items that drive change. But what I'm also hearing you, it's that day-to-day cadence and how you do that is also going to facilitate the other. But it's often the big train wrecks that we see in our organization. We're like, shit, like we got to get somebody to come in versus that, we should be able to figure it out on our own. But yet 2 years later, we still haven't kind of mindset. I think we've all got that in organizations.
Sometimes it's not clear until you go,
fair enough.
oh, wait a sec, we're looking at our outcomes for government because we're a nonprofit, and we're like, just a sec, like we haven't achieved, or we're not totally clear on where we've got
Hmm.
what's going on here, that we're not clear on that. Or we instituted that new policy a year ago and we're still having these issues. What's going on,
Hmm.
right? And it can be a combination of, we didn't communicate it well, we didn't do all of those things. But quite often, if you circle back, it really comes back to dialogue and engagement and involvement. And did we do those things in the right way when we tried to make a change, build out something new?
This layers so strongly into change management, and so much people feeling like, were you part of the change? Did you get run over by the change?
Yeah.
Were you included in the change? And if we're not included in the change and we feel it's being done to us, it's often easily to just very passively not do the thing, right?
And let's just, I mean, honestly, people are busy and they get into the day to day, and you get into your job and you're doing your day to day and day to day. You know, for strategy, for example, to be executed, for you to actually get to whatever that next thing is, that whatever, achieve that goal, to achieve your vision over the 10 or 12 years, it's got to be embedded and operationalized. It's got to be part of what you're doing every day. And so often, leaders as well are in the weeds and we're just
Yeah.
buried and just surviving and get stuff done. But this thinking and this dialogue is a way to kind of lift ourselves up and go, okay, let's look at that bigger thing, and why aren't we making progress, and what do we need to do? And okay, now we see that we're not building this into our processes and our technology and our jobs and our roles, and we're not looking at skills to make sure we've got the right skills to support where we want to go. It's all of those things are interconnected.
Mm. I had a conversation recently with Jenny Gilbert from Senior Facilitator at SAIT, and she talked about she said 90% of the leaders she works with would be considered working leaders. They don't just sit around and lead. They're so busy with deliverables, with their own timelines, with their own projects. And, she was really honest about how challenging that can be when you're filled up
Yeah.
with the day-to-day tasks to even think about what you just said. And
Yeah.
it's nobody's fault. It's
Nope.
it's sometimes by design, right?
Yeah. But then that's some of the reason why you
That's the
sit back
trigger.
a year
There's the
later and
trigger.
go, we had this goal last year and we're nowhere near it, or no one even knows what the goal was from our strategy.
Long forgotten, the dusty binder on the shelf, which I think a
Yeah.
lot of organizations now, their files buried in your computer somewhere, but it
Yep.
doesn't make them any less dusty.
In a nice folder marked strategy.
Oh my gosh, I love it. For you, what's the perfect partner for a client, or what's the perfect engagement? Is it just a level of willingness? They've got enough pain now that they're willing to make changes. What facilitates a great engagement for you?
I think it's an openness and looking at me like a partner. Um and who understands that I'm there, even though that leader might be my client per se.
Right.
I'm there to serve the group. As a facilitator, I'm there to serve the group and the group's needs. So sometimes the leader is not in touch and doesn't really understand the challenges and where things are coming up for the team. Sometimes they don't care, but I will say that's rare. The leaders I like to work with are the ones who really care,
Who do
but
care?
they're just maybe not as aware. And maybe part of it is because they're always buried in the doing the stuff.
Yeah.
And, once they have this opportunity to sit back and hear their team, they go, wow, the team is seeing me as a obstacle getting in the way of them doing some things. That's important. I need to pay attention to that.
Hmm.
So for me, it's a client that's open, that we can be a partner, that we're in this together. I'm here to help you, but understand that I'm, as a facilitator in particular, I'm here to serve the group. As a consultant, I might be doing a broader thing for you, helping you with communications or helping you through change management, or, some of those other things. And maybe that meeting is part of that, or that dialogue is part of that. But as a facilitator, I want to work with someone who's open, who appreciates the expertise I'm bringing to the table, who understands that I'm there to serve the purpose of the group. So I think that's really the sort of ideal client. I mean, I like big challenges and I like little ones too.
But that level of self-awareness to even go, hey, we can do this better. Hey, let's take some accountability.
Yeah.
Let's create some trust. One of the notes you sent me referenced Patrick Lencioni. I remember when I first read the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and like, if you don't have trust at the base of that pyramid, it's on shaky ground before you even get out of the gate, right? Mm-hmm.
And that trust, again, it goes right back to our conversation that we talked about, the congruency, the authenticity. You can bring me in, and this is what I will not go into an engagement where it's like, I just need you to come in and make it seem like we're talking to each other, but, we're going to do what we need to do, but we need to say that we involved employees. Like, that's not going to be something that I join, because, again, it's that congruency of action to words. It's that authenticity. And you can say, listen, I don't know what I need to do. And that's fine. I'm fine with that challenge. I don't know what I need to do, but here's what I'm seeing as
I want
a struggle outcome with our teams, and I need your help.
I appreciate that dialogue you see about, we're going to do it this way to make them feel like we care. People are very perceptive. You're not going to pull that one over on anybody for too long, in my opinion. And then you wonder why you have a huge churn rate in your staffing. But anyway, that's another podcast for another day. We're gonna trick them into thinking we care. I don't find that to be an overly effective strategy.
Yeah. So, and I will say I'm using that as an example, but
an extreme example. Of course,
that's very rare. And in fact, I don't even think I've heard that in the last, I don't know how many years. It's
good. Well, that's
it's
a win.
Much
then.
more of, can we be partners? We're trying to do this. Can you help us? And we realize that this is really critical, and we need that neutral person who's going to come up, who's going to take care of the needs of the group. And,
the willingness to be vulnerable with the goal of the coherence and the consistency that does create trust.
Yeah.
And meetings are not a necessary evil. They're actually a superpower if you use them properly. That's what I'm really hearing you say. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And that's why, my back goes up a little bit when it's like meetings are such a waste of time. But I agree, because I've been in meetings that are a waste of time. I've been in meetings that should have been an email. I've been in meetings going, I have no idea why I'm here. What you're talking about has no relationship to anything I'm doing or what I need, right? So I completely empathize and understand when people are like, I've just been to so many meetings and they're not clear and I don't know what I'm doing at the end of it. And it just seems like a waste of time. So I'm completely empathetic to that.
Because in that instance, it might actually be a waste of time for you personally. That's actually true.
Yeah. But meetings, as you've just said, are a superpower if they're used well, and they're really used for that co-creation, that dialogue. And frankly, they are showing they're demonstrating what your culture is. They're demonstrating who your leaders are. They're demonstrating how teams work together. That's all that. And that's what Patrick Lencioni talked about. He said, instead of looking at the balance sheets, I'm just going to go to a senior level meeting and see how well it's run and see if they have any inspiration and any drive and any vision. And if they don't, I'm not interested.
I love that so much. It's such a simplified, I'll go over here and take the analytical and the safe approach versus just watching how these humans interact. And I will be able to know from there whether, where this thing's going or what that looks like. I do really appreciate that. Lisa, that was very informative. And I appreciate your no nonsense approach to we need to be better. There was no negotiating in that, in your position on this one. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, have a chat, are you LinkedIn enthusiast?
Yeah,
are you
LinkedIn. I am, I'm going to just admit it. I'm a communications person with a terrible website because I've spent no time updating it, working on it for probably
years. You're too busy
years.
doing client work. I get it.
So LinkedIn is the place to go. My contact information is there. I've got a pretty robust profile. I like to share as much as I can, and hopefully it, sparks something. I recently did a whole piece on, teams and being called in to do team building and, looking at the authentic side of things as opposed to let's do the fun things.
Go through
So LinkedIn for sure.
Okay, fantastic. Lisa Baril on LinkedIn. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've got a leadership meeting tomorrow, and it made me thinking about, okay, what are we doing to set ourselves up for success? And are we being clear on the purpose? And we kind of are, but can we be better? Absolutely. So you've inspired me to go away
that's fantastic.
And share some of these learnings with my team, actually. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Lisa, it was a pleasure chatting with you. Have an awesome day.
You too.